people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at the recent most valuable promotions signees, the additions they've made to their stable of Valkyries. We talked about Naomi and we talked about Dina. Now, let's talk about Ramla. Former Matchroom alum Ramla Ali, who when last we saw her in summer of last year, she was challenging for the WBC title in the super bantamweight division against long-reigning champion Yemi Mercado. The decision did not go Ramla's way, and I guess on that premise, Matchroom decided to cut her loose, leaving the door open for Ramla to migrate over to Most Valuable Promotions, sporting a professional record of 9 wins with 2 losses, 2 knockouts, having been knocked out at least once in 11 professional bouts.
35 years old.
What is the virtue of signing Ramla Ali at this point in her career when she's coming off a loss and she is in her mid-30s? I will admit that the work for Ramla is going to take a lot more elbow grease than the work for Naomi or the work for Dina,
The work for Nat Dove.
because they're all younger than Ramla Ali and they're all unbeaten, whereas Ramla has already lost 2 times. She got knocked out by Julissa Guzman in June of 2023, and she lost to Yemi Mercado in June of 2024.
Sheesh, June is not a good month for Ramla.
In any event, Most Valuable Promotions decided to pick her up, and if they are to try to guide Ramla to a title, and if she's going to stay at 122, they have to tread carefully. They have to get her several fights in the interim while they wait for the world title situation to clear up, because being honest, as much as I like Ramla, she doesn't win a title from anybody there. She just lost to Yemi Mercado in her last fight. She's not beating Alalshikh, and she's not beating Nazarena Romero.
Her best bet to win a title at 122 is to get herself back in the winner's bracket, bide her time, keeping busy, keeping active, and waiting for one or some of these champions to perhaps move up in weight.
Say Alalshikh becomes undisputed champion at the weight in the next 12 months. After that, she won't have that much to do at 122, so she might move up.
A scenario like that, where the alphabet titles become vacant, that's Ramla's best bet to pick up a title at 122. Now at 126, the situation might actually be a bit more negotiable.
Even though it's at a higher weight, and she would have to fight against bigger girls, you have to remember that Amanda Serrano holds 2 alphabet titles in the featherweight division. 2 titles that she may end up dropping in the not-so-distant future. So, if Ramla moves up at the right time, she can then pick one or some of them up.
That could happen.
Why did Most Valuable Promotions decide to pick up a 35-year-old fighter who's never been a champion and is coming off a loss? Because there was always some untapped potential in Ramla Ali. She has a bit of a cult following among the Somali crowd in the United Kingdom, and she is a model. She's not just a boxer.
She's got a bit more appeal than your average pugilist. So with the right guidance and grooming, maybe they can get Ramla to a title. I don't think it's going to be easy.
Adding to the intrigue, where before Ramla Ali was training here in the United States on the West Coast with Manny Robles in her corner, now she's going to be cornered by former fighter, now retired, John Ryder, a guy who's got a very different philosophy, different way of fighting a fight than Ramla does, where John Ryder is a brawler, a slugger, Ramla is a boxer and a thinker, a mover and a jabber. They're very different fighters, John and Ramla. So for John to be the one that's training Ramla moving forward, it's curious what result that will produce. And so outwardly, it would seem that it's going to require a bit more elbow grease from MVP to guide Ramla than it will to guide the other girls that they've signed There are one or some things working against Ramla Ali at this stage in her career, given where she campaigns and the age she is now. But let's see. Let's see what MVP can do, because I've learned not to underestimate them.
I know a lot of people. Look what they did with Gervonta too. I want everybody, all these young fighters that are listening to this, and you could clip this. It's a short part right here.
I got you.
To Ryan could clip this right here. To all you young fighters, look at the amount of love they were giving and sharing to Gervonta Tank Davis prior to the fight. Look at what all the reporters were doing prior to the fight. Look how they were all laughing at all his jokes prior to his fight against Lamont Roach. After the fight, look how many were waiting to down this man. Down him. See, I'm going to talk my smack with Tank, but that's because I want to fight him. That's me. I can say that. But I just want all you young fighters to really look about it. They don't care about us.
Yeah.
They won't ever care about us. When you're winning, they're going to be there. But they're waiting for any moment to slip up. Just a man, even a draw. Look how much hate he got out of it.
Yeah, not to get deep, but you know, it's a part of our psychology. We have to learn how to care about other people.
Teofimo feels that the boxing community at large, a portion of them, have turned against Gervonta Davis given the performance that he shelled out against Lamont Roach. And they very much have, but my question is, what reaction were they supposed to have? What were they supposed to do? Keep him on a pedestal while he so brazenly breaks the rules and gets away with it?
He didn't seem to factor that into his equation.
All the guidelines that constitute a professional boxing match and how many of them were violated the night that he fought Lamont Roach. Are we intended to ignore all of this and go easy on Gervonta? Be nice to him.
Well, what about Lamont Roach? Doesn't all of this alienate him? Is he not a pugilist like Gervonta is a pugilist?
While you stand on your soapbox and express your empathy for your fellow boxer, your fellow pugilist, you seem to be leaving some pivotal details out.
You're saying that these people, these spectators in what is a spectator sport, they don't care about you?
Well, you don't care about them. How many of them were hounding you to fight Vasyl Lomachenko for years, and how many more of them were hounding you to fight Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney? How many more are hounding you now to fight Shakur Stevenson while you ignore them? So when you see that there were people that were waiting to take shots at Gervonta, what do you think, that they're supposed to love you regardless? It's an occupational hazard that not everybody's gonna like you and what you do, and it behooves you to not be overly sensitive about it. But oftentimes in professional sports, athletes are temperamental,
narcissistic,
and overly sensitive, which is why they've always had a fractured relationship with the media. They don't want the media asking them the tough questions, otherwise they'll deny them access.
And only green light the guys that are gonna ask them softball questions, the guys that are gonna stroke their egos and fawn over them, and everything they do.
What point is Teofimo Lopez making? That you should never, under any circumstances, say anything critical about a boxer, even when he's breaking the rules and it's obvious to everyone? You took a knee, and they didn't count it as a knockdown.
You turned your back on your opponent, and you weren't disqualified for it. To make matters worse, you ran to your corner and consorted with them in the middle of the round.
This ain't something small like a punch that sails a bit low. These are brazen violations that everybody saw. So when you see the audience's reaction, what reaction were they supposed to have?
What were they supposed to say?
And this is what I mean when I say that if you let the boxers tell it, it's always supposed to work out to where they get what they want. Fight purses that may be in excess of their own commercial value or the value of a show, and you should never ruffle their feathers. You should never ask them questions that make them uncomfortable. This is why I don't view some of these guys as the gladiators that they make themselves out to be.
A lot of them are crybabies.
So that you can turn around and tell me that boxing is a difficult and dangerous sport. Not saying that it isn't, but if you're going to complain about what are occupational hazards, then don't box.
Don't fight then.
Because this comes with the territory. I didn't make the rules, and all Teofimo's really defending is Gervonta Davis's presumed right to break them, to break the rules, get away with it, then not be criticized for it. I mean, you literally got away with it. With no penalty. He wasn't penalized by the New York State Athletic Commission. They didn't do nothing. And now you want to bellyache that people have got something to say about it? What are they supposed to say about it?
I'm not unsympathetic to the plight of the professional boxer, the pugilist, and what occupational hazards come with the territory.
But don't mistake yourself for a soldier, because you're not a soldier. Don't mistake yourself for a municipal servant, because you're not.
It's almost like you're demanding fealty from the audience when the only real reason you're fighting is for your bank account, not for them. You say that the audience doesn't care about you, but you don't care about them.
So what are you crying about? Let's get down to brass tacks. If these guys could make big money fighting journeymen and gatekeepers and ham and eggers, they would do so, irrespective of what the audience thinks, irrespective of what the audience wants.
What they want is to milk the sport for all it's worth.
Irrespective of what the audience wants, so why would you be demanding fealty from them or expect that level of fealty from them? We're not your mom.
You're goddamn right the audience doesn't love you unconditionally.
They're not supposed to. What you're really at odds with is being held to a standard and being expected to deliver on a deadline.
You don't want to have to.
I never said it wasn't a hard job, but you ain't boxing because Ring IQ told you to box, or some other content creator. You're doing it because you want to, and you're really doing it for your bank account, not me or somebody else.
Cannicelli Stravazak.
Guy breaks a bunch of rules in sequence, loses the fight to a lot of people, and what Teofimo wants is for people to go easy on him.
As if he hasn't been on easy street enough. As if he hasn't already had it easy enough to the point you're bringing up super featherweights up to lightweight, and cause you can't stay in character.
I'm not gonna play you the world's smallest violin because you're going as far as bringing up naturally smaller fighters, massive underdogs, and when you can't deliver, I'm supposed to feel sorry for you?
What about the guy you just screwed over?
Call a spade a spade. The audience is fickle, but the mob has always been fickle.
When has that not been the case?
Comes with the territory, sweet cheeks. And finally, what seems to be the ongoing feud between Turki Alalshikh and Gary Jonas. An official statement from boxing scene owner and chairman Gary Jonas regarding Turki's comments. Following a well-researched article by Lance Pugmire, formerly of the LA Times, now writing for Boxing Scene, about the new boxing league planned by Turki Alalshikh and his partners, Dana White and TKO, Mr. Alalshikh disparaged both Mr. Pugmire and Boxing Scene, whose team include some of boxing's most accomplished writers. This is unfortunately not the first time Mr. Alalshikh has sought to exert undue pressure on Boxing Scene and other news outlets.
What pressure? All he said was that the article wasn't accurate. I saw what he said.
In essence, Mr. Alalshikh appears to want a press that is censored in its coverage of both the sport and business of boxing. Boxing Scene's mission is to cover the sport fairly and professionally without fear or favor. After I became the website's new owner in 2024, I assured the team that I would respect their journalistic integrity. The reporters and editors alone decide their coverage, what they write, and how they write about it. I have not intervened and will not intervene, even when that coverage has been critical of fighters or fights that I promote. Similarly, I do not exert any influence on how Boxing Scene covers colleagues and competitors. Mr. Alalshikh also brought up past litigation against the company I have not been part of in over a decade, and he sought to tarnish the award-winning behavioral health company and treatment centers I currently operate. I am proud to work with a team that provides help to thousands of patients suffering from addiction each year. This type of shameless attack on one of my other businesses can only be viewed as a strong-arm tactic to pressure me into influencing the reporting of Boxing Scene. Mr. Alalshikh's attempts to censor Boxing Scene also include consistently refusing media credentials to Boxing Scene's reporters and barring our editorial team from covering these fights on site. Regardless, despite these numerous attempts by Mr. Alalshikh to censor Boxing Scene, we will not be deterred from our mission of being the fans' most trusted source for fair and transparent coverage of the sport and business of boxing. Mr. Alalshikh may use his own outlet, Ring Magazine, to promote his personal narratives, but Boxing Scene will always remain unbiased and uninfluenced. Let me be clear. Boxing Scene stands by Mr. Pugmire's article and its team of reporters and editors. They will continue to seek a professional and productive relationship with everyone they cover while remaining independent and impartial. As with the fighters they cover, the writers will not pull their punches. I would hope that Mr. Alalshikh and his partners at TKO would support that approach, given they allegedly want to make the sport better.
I read Lance's article and did a segment on it here on the channel. There was nothing so explosive in it.
Aside from a couple of guys and their anonymous opinions, as well as estimated numbers for what TKO fighters can expect to be paid.
That's all that was in there, and that's all it was really about, and Turki responded by saying there were inaccuracies in that article, and he did take a jab at Gary Jonas. He absolutely did, but that's no worse than Gary Jonas taking jabs at him. That's what he's been doing.
It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. With networks like NBC and Fox and Showtime having left the boxing space, there's plenty of room in the market for both TKO Boxing and their league and Pro Box, to where they don't need to be bickering like this. But if they are, I speculate it's because Gary feels threatened that TKO is going to offer all the mid-tier fighters a better deal than Pro Box can.
That's what I think the problem is.
Gary feels that his editorial panel, his writers at Boxing Scene, are being frozen out of Turki's events, prevented from covering them, but come on. Gary owns Boxing Scene, like Turki owns Ring Magazine. They're peas in a pod, these two guys.
To accuse Turki of censoring Boxing Scene by not allowing you access, it's his event. It's his show. He can so reserve the right to deny you media credentials, because that's a privilege, not a right.
And the same applies to any promoter that puts on a show. It's always been that way. Not everybody gets media credentials. Now, maybe you feel entitled to them because you own Boxing Scene, and Boxing Scene is a well-known periodical, but that's still a privilege, not a right.
It's a little bit over the top. It's overly dramatic to say that he's censoring you because he's not giving you media credentials. You can still cover the fight without media credentials.
You can almost set your watch by this underlying principle. Whenever someone new enters into the boxing space, there's going to be one or some individuals that aren't happy about it because they view that individual as a threat and someone who could make their job a bit more difficult, a bit harder. So when a TKO Boxing League plans on opening up shop in America, targeting mid-tier fighters, the kind of fighters that Pro Box normally relies on, they're not going to be happy about it, and that's what this is really all about. But like I said, due to the void created by all these major networks leaving the boxing space over the last few years, whether it's NBC, Fox, Showtime, and reportedly ESPN could be the next.
The void left behind is a void that both Pro Box and TKO jointly could fill.
As the PBC is doing less and less shows annually, outsourcing more and more of their fighters in Top Rank, and whatever it is they're going through with ESPN, that creates a viable avenue for both a Pro Box and a TKO to operate in this market.
Now, there's no need for something like this in the UK market, or the Asian market, the Australian market, and certainly not the Mexican market, but in the American one, there is a void left behind. There's a void to fill.
And don't forget about Most Valuable Promotions, who we talked about in my previous segment, and what could be their partnership with Netflix that would thereby make them a powerhouse in this market.
Not just.
The basic idea is, I don't expect Pro Box or Gary Jonas to be happy that a new challenger has emerged, a new competitor, but a competitive market is a healthy market for the consumer.
Because now you guys have got to work harder, and I know you don't want to have to, but
you have to stay on your toes to keep up with the Joneses, and the quality of the content you put out, it's got to be the best quality, the best you can produce, because there's a new game in town, and they've got deep pockets.